In the village of Willow's End, nestled between mountains and forests, there was an ancient oak tree that towered over everything else. Locals called it the Heart Tree, believing it was somehow enchanted, as no one could explain how it grew so large or why the air felt electric near it, buzzing with whispers on the wind. Beneath its roots, they said, was a hidden portal to another world, but it had remained closed for centuries. One summer, a boy named Emmett moved to Willow's End with his family. Emmett was a quiet kid, with a habit of wandering off to explore new places, a knack for discovering hidden trails, and a journal where he sketched strange things he saw or imagined. Naturally, he was drawn to the Heart Tree. One evening, as twilight set in, Emmett decided to visit the tree. As he reached it, he noticed a small door at the base of the trunk, hidden among the twisted roots. It hadn't been there the day before. With his heart pounding, he turned the tiny brass handle and the door opened silently. He found himself in a tunnel that led down, illuminated by glowing moss along the walls. The tunnel was narrow, but Emmett felt an undeniable urge to see where it led. After a few minutes of walking, he reached an underground chamber. At its center was a stone pedestal with an object resting on it, a silver pocket watch ornately carved and glimmering faintly in the dim light. Curious, he picked it up, feeling an odd tingling sensation as he did. The moment his fingers touched the metal, the watch clicked open, revealing two clocks, one ticking forward and one moving backward. Emmett felt dizzy, and suddenly the room shifted around him. He was no longer in the chamber. Instead, he was standing in the middle of Willow's End, but it wasn't his Willow's End. The buildings looked newer, the people wore strange clothes, and he realized he must have gone back in time. But just as he was about to turn and run, he saw something that stopped him in his tracks. A girl who looked just like his little sister Mia, but dressed in clothes from another century. Emmett tried to approach her, but as he moved closer, the world began to ripple and he found himself back in the chamber. The watch had closed itself, ticking faintly in his hand. He knew then that the watch allowed him to travel through time, but it came with a cost. He could only go for short moments, mere glimpses, before being pulled back. Over the next few days, Emmett kept returning to the Heart Tree and using the watch to explore different times in Willow's End. He saw the village during a great festival, watched a storm destroy the original town hall, and once even glimpsed a strange future version of Willow's End, where everything was overgrown and deserted, as if humans had vanished. One day Emmett found a note tucked under the watch, written in a hurried scrawl, "Beware the watchkeeper." He felt a shiver down his spine. He hadn't realized there was anyone else who knew about the watch. As he kept traveling, Emmett started noticing strange things, shadows flickering in his peripheral vision, whispers that seemed to call his name, and a feeling of being watched. One night, during a particularly stormy evening, he heard footsteps behind him as he left the Heart Tree. When he turned, he saw a tall figure shrouded in darkness, a pair of piercing green eyes glowing faintly from beneath a hood. "Why are you meddling with time, boy?" The figure's voice was low and almost mechanical, as though it were echoing from somewhere far away. Emmett, terrified, clutched the watch tightly. I just wanted to see," he stammered. The watchkeeper took a step closer, his face still hidden. "This watch is not yours. You are disturbing the balance." He reached out a skeletal hand, but before he could take the watch, Emmett felt a surge of energy course through him. The watch glowed, pulling him back into the Heart Tree, but this time he didn't return to his time. Instead, he found himself in a world suspended between moments, a ghostly version of Willow's End where the sun and moon both hung in the sky, unmoving. There, Emmett saw others, people dressed in clothes from different eras, all wandering aimlessly. These were the souls of those who had been trapped by the watchkeeper, people who had meddled with time and become stuck in this limbo. They looked at Emmett with empty, sorrowful eyes, as if begging him to help them. Desperate, Emmett called out, "How do I get back?" A girl from the crowd stepped forward, and to his horror, he recognized her. It was the girl who looked like Mia. She pointed to the watch and whispered, "You must find the original moment, the heart tree's first time before it took root. Only then can you escape." She faded into mist before he could say anything more. Clutching the watch, Emmett turned the hands backward, further and further until he felt a lurch and the world around him shifted. He found himself at a clearing centuries ago, watching as villagers planted a sapling that would become the heart tree. He held the watch up, and with a shudder, it melted into his hand, vanishing completely. As it disappeared, Emmett felt a rush of air, and in an instant he was back in his own time, standing in front of the heart tree. The small door and its roots was gone, and the strange whispers faded. He looked down at his empty hand, realizing the watch had taken him on its last journey. When he finally returned home, he felt changed, as though he had aged years in a single day. He never told anyone about what he had seen, but he visited the heart tree often, feeling a deep connection to it and to the countless others who had once sought its secrets. The town of Willow's End carried on, unaware of the silent guardian in their midst, the boy who had seen all of its yesterdays and tomorrows. And from then on, when the breeze rustled through the leaves of the heart tree, Emmett could almost swear he heard the faint ticking of a clock echoing across time.